Let's come a little closer. Oh, we're losing some frames. We are connected. All right. Sweet. Hello, everybody. We're gonna wait. Oh, we already got a viewer. I love it. Stick around. Throw something in the chat. Today we're gonna be. Oh, hey, Brian. Yeah. Well, I guess while we're waiting for more people to hop on, make sure you hit reply all in the emails that I'm sending you, so that way Eli gets them too. So we can we just have him make those edits. Just send him your logo with a transparent background so he can make the edits, and we can and after this live stream I'll be posting that. Sweet. Yeah, let's go ahead and send that. But yeah, Brian, today I was going to talk about just like my or just like I guess you probably saw the title, obviously the recent events with the hate crime, with the dude who shot and killed 8 people, 6 of them women of Asian descent. And I wanted to talk about kind of putting together my thoughts, and I posted a video about this last night that I posted on my YouTube. I tweeted and Facebooked it to kind of help to understand like the origins of this, why this is happening, and then I wanted to continue that conversation into what like the like kind of a layer deeper of root causes, and then what we can do about it. So I guess I'll start talking about it. So first things first, we dehumanize everyone in this country. Black, white, brown, everyone. We dehumanize everyone. And then what we do is we give power and permission to commit violent acts to only one group of people. And then what we do is we tell that group of people over and over and over again every single day that they're going to lose something, whether it's their country or their job or their identity. Doesn't matter if it's true. Truth is irrelevant in this context. We tell them that they're going to lose something, and human nature does not like loss. And we tell them that they're going to lose it because this other group is going to take it from them. This entity over there is going to take it from them. Again, everyone is dehumanized, so I don't even want to say a group of people, because that's not the way that they're seen in this context. And so then what happens is, okay, so they have the power, and so they're afraid they're going to lose something. They know why they're going to lose it, even if none of it's true, and it's because of this thing over there. And so then, and they have the power and they have the permission, and to commit, to quote unquote do something about it. In this case, it was killing 8 people, and what happens is, because the person committing the violent act and the people they're committing that violent act to aren't actually people, neither of them are, all of the morality surrounding people killing people is removed. It's removed from the equation. There's no moral responsibility to the world for that person committing the violent act, because they're not a person, and the thing they're killing isn't a person either. Hey, welcome whoever just joined. Go ahead and throw something in the chat. So there's no morality tied up in this, like, in this person killing another person, because in their minds they're not a person, the other person's not a, like, nobody is a person in this case. Okay, so why does all of this stuff happen? Why do we dehumanize everybody? How do we dehumanize everybody? Why do we give power and permission to this one group of people? Why do they believe these false messages about like the things that they're gonna lose? And this is multifaceted. There's no single thing going on here. Um, so there's so for one, a profit-driven media. This is from Fox to Facebook. The media is not incentivized to spread information. It's incentivized to make money. And they have found that the best way to make money is to spread misinformation and lies and propaganda to get people angry at each other and mad at each other, and to divide everybody, to get more eyes on ads, to get more watch time. We have a term for this. It's called doom scrolling, right? They're taking advantage of like the human psyche, of just like this, like wanting, only getting almost like aroused by negativity in a way. So they're taking advantage of that. That's a piece of this. Another piece of this is disparity, economic disparity. Damn near everybody in this country is poor. I mean, most people in this country are not secure, are not really secure in their housing, in their income. Over 90% of new jobs are temp, gig, or contract work. Right, so none of that is stable. Okay, so Brian, you just said you just watched Trail 7 about Vietnam protests and trials. It's been like this forever. Yeah, I'm not even suggesting that any of what I'm talking about is new. I think it's been amplified by the information age, and the other thing that's amplifying it is the gerontocracy. Right, so it's a government ruled by old people. Specifically, and it's not, not to be ageist. But it's like many of our representatives in U.S. Congress still live in the 20th century. We saw them go up against Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of them. It was embarrassing for everybody, right? Like it was not good. Hello, whoever just joined, feel free to throw something in the chat. But yeah, having a Congress full of people who don't have any inkling of like, oh, we need to update the interpretation of the First Amendment and what free speech is and what freedom of the press is in the information age, because now we have all these weird profit motives and everything kind of poisoning it in a much more extreme way than it has in the past, and people have individuals have much louder voices, and so the inaction of Congress has forced these private companies to interpret the First Amendment, which nobody wants, right? You and I don't want that. We want our free speech, our individual free speech. These companies don't want that. It's a PR nightmare for them. They'd rather just have all the rules and regulations laid out for them, so that way they can just follow them. And if the users don't like it, they say, well, too bad, go talk to your rep. We're just following the law, right? And so like, that's an issue. Another issue is our electoral politics. Our current choose one winner take all voting system. There are many different ways to vote. There are different types of ballots. There are a couple different types of ballots. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways to tabulate those ballots, and they all give you different results, and they all have different trends and different effects. Our current system that we commonly use, choose one, winner take all, also known as first past the post, also known as plurality, this is a common thing in voting system lingo, has what's called a center squeeze effect, where it squeezes out moderate candidates and candidates who are in between, and it favors polarizing candidates. And so the mechanics of our voting system inevitably, and it's called Duverger's law, inevitably produces this two-party duopoly that everybody hates, right? Nobody likes this polarity, and so this just feeds fuel to the fire. It feeds our tribalism, our tribalistic instincts of like black and white, red versus blue, you versus me kind of thing, that it's part of human nature and human psychology is tribalism. And so it's a vicious cycle. It feeds off of itself and each other, and we see that now with just this like hardline split of like a 50-50 Senate, of like the House is almost 50-50, like like we saw how close these last two presidential races were, right? And it's like that feeds into it as well. And so what else is there? I mean, and then of course there's just like the lasting effects of just racism built into the system at every level. That's another piece of this puzzle. It's the white supremacy that has continued to linger. If I were to say it almost tepidly, you could use a stronger word than linger. And that's in favor of like I said, white supremacy, but there's also anti-Asian hate as well, of course, as we saw in this situation that was amplified by white supremacy and all the other kind of like standard liberal talking points that I just for me a little bit like, yeah, I know this already, like everybody knows this. I want to move past this and move on to the deeper conversation. I want to get past just the skin deep level and get down to the real roots and chunks of this. So I've identified a variety of major problems: a profit-driven media, our voting system, like lingering racism that's present throughout the system, and all this stuff. So what do we do about it? Well, this comes back to the pillars of my platform. So changing our voting systems, which is something that we can do, fortunately, in the United States, at the local level. So I'll read your last two comments, Brian. Totally agree. Just made me think about that Asian hatred started about how that Asian hatred started as well, and so much discrimination. Yeah. Oh, right. Because you're talking about Vietnam. Right. And said my dad was in Vietnam as well, and the way he talks, even though he is just a brainwashed old man. Newsflash, we're all brainwashed. Every single one of us, including me. I recently talked to somebody about like the Uyghur human rights violations happening in China, and she was telling me like, actually, that's all coming from one source, and it's this like anti-Semitic dude who's like trying to start a race war, and like it's all not real, like it's all BS. And I just barely started to look into it, so like I don't want to make any claims in any direction about it, but it's like, wow, I was brainwashed about that too, right? It's like it's this constant fight, it's this constant battle fighting against brainwashing. So all of us are brainwashed, and like keep that in mind. World is run by people. We're all humans. We're all fallible. Nobody has it figured out. I will tell, like, the smarter you are, the more you realize that nobody is smart. So like, I don't know if you've ever talked to like a true like expert in a field. I'm not an expert in anything, but like you talk to like some really, really smart scientist, like they will tell you like, no, dude, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Like, I'm an idiot. I'm dumb. Like all these, like, and you run into that all the time. Okay. God says hate ? The forefathers of America started racial hate. Yeah, no, and like that's what I'm saying is like the racism is continuing to pervade through the system. Like, yeah. But okay, so what do we do? So fortunately in America, this is not true in every country. We can change our voting systems at like local levels, all the way up to the state level. National is a little bit more difficult, but that's really only applies to the presidential race, and I'm working on something to deal with that, but I'm not revealing that yet. That'll be a surprise for, maybe in a month or two. But changing our voting systems can be huge because, like I said earlier, the mechanics of different voting methods produce incredibly different results. So there are two voting methods that I fight for: approval voting and star voting. Without going, I've already done live streams about this. There's a ton of information out there. Center for Election Science, Equal Vote Coalitions, easy to find them. But approval voting is comically simple. It is changing the language on the ballot from choose one to choose one or more. So instead of bulleting next to one candidate or bubbling in next to one candidate, you can bubble in next to all the candidates you like or all the candidates you approve of, and then you tabulate it the same. You just count up all the votes or all the approvals. Whoever gets the most approvals wins. And this actually, this one tiny change goes a really long way. I like to consider it the highest and fastest return on investment for any voting system shift in the United States right now. So this is like a great thing that we can do. We can get implemented. I'm actually currently working with the Center for Election Science to get approval voting for Austin City Council elections. And this actually has the opposite of that center squeeze effect. It has a center expansion effect. It trends toward the middle. It's not a perfect system, but you get a lot for a little, and that's what makes it really powerful. It's power and simplicity. The other method I fight for is star voting. So star voting, it's just a little bit more complicated. You score all the it's a score ballot, so you score all the candidates from 0 to 5 stars. You add up all the scores across all the ballots. Whichever 2 candidates have the highest score stick around. Everyone else is eliminated. And then step 2 is whichever of those 2 candidates you scored higher on your ballot, that candidate gets your 1 full vote. And then whoever has the most of those 1 full votes wins. And this is like, I like to describe it as the ultimate culmination of modern voting science. I really do see it as the end game for single winner systems. It's really, really incredible. You can run into a few hiccups. There are reasons to fight for approval voting instead of star voting in some jurisdictions. You got to dig down into the details and learn about it. But those 2 systems, fighting for those 2 are really, really powerful things that we can do to fight the extreme polarization and like the duopoly and really like break the duopoly in a way. That's something we can do. Addressing profit-driven media. There are some things I want to do legislatively to address this. So let's look at the First Amendment again. So freedom of speech, yes, great. I believe in freedom of speech for the individual. And then freedom of the press. Freedom of press is great. When I think of freedom of the press, though, I think of freedom of information, not freedom of misinformation. Now, there is no algorithm for truth. What we can do is we can cleanly define what counts as press. And I want to talk to some more journalists about how to do this correctly. But what we can do is we can just categorize it, right? We can say it's press or it's not press. If it's press, it's about spreading information. It's not misinformation. It's about telling people about current events, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the community, and what's happening in the community. And then we can separate off all this other stuff like political commentary and all this other kind of like nonsense and all the narratives and everything. Let me pause. Brian said, what is the military and police involvement in racial hatred and how could they help it? I agree with this. I like this idea. Cool. I'll come back around to your question. I want to finish what I'm talking about, but I will address your question directly, Brian. Okay, so we've now separated off political commentary and narratives and all this other nonsense. And like that we can actually moderate. We've been moderating that forever, right? We used to make it so you couldn't had, well, yeah, I don't I agree, don't like censorship, but this is what I'm saying, like for the individual, right? You say whatever you want, put a content warning on it, but say whatever you want. For press, like categorizing it, right, labeling it as like this is press or this is not press. It has to be clearly labeled. It has to be auditory and visual. You have to have it on screen the whole time. This is press or this is not press. Right, and saying it out loud at the beginning of the programming and every time you come back from a commercial. But then you can moderate like the political commentary and the narratives, which is something we've been doing for forever, right? Moderating content, and so like we used to say you can't have cigarette commercials or other adult content on Saturday mornings. That's how we ended up with Saturday morning cartoons. We can do a similar thing for political commentary. We used to have, or technically the rule still exists where you have to give like opposing viewpoints time to speak. It has to be in good faith. There's a whole law about this, and so you could kind of revive that or update that. But then what you do, so you're saying more public access, and I'm kind of getting to that. It's like, okay, back to the press. The next thing we need to do with the press is we need to work to remove the profit motive. That's non-trivial, but there are things we can do. So working to remove the profit motive, we can have low conditional funding for local and investigative and independent journalism. So we can say, okay, you have to still prove that you're a journalist, right? That's the conditional part. You have to prove that you're a journalist. How you prove that? I got to talk to some journalists. But prove that you're a real serious journalist, and then the government will have a federal program to just give you money to sustain yourself, to live, and to go do this journalism, whether it's local or investigative or whatever, to go do this journalism under the condition that when you release, when you publish, that you don't make any money off of it, no advertising, no nothing, and there's no other rules about what you can and can't do journalism about. You just have to show that you're a real journalist. It'll be low conditional. It'll be still fairly easy to get, but that way you remove the profit motive from this journalism, and this has a couple great effects. So not only are you removing the profit motive, you're also decentralizing sources and narratives. Right now, we're seeing a centralization of narratives into these big media suppliers, I guess you could say. Again, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, or well, I guess it's more Google, but and they have these echo chambers and stuff too, which of course is a problem to deal with as well. So having decentralized narratives, having local sources about local news that you can trust. I mean, people need local press and local journalism. So this is a way to kind of address that as well. So those are some big things with me for, and then another thing is that I like to say is creating genuine human connection with people you disagree with, which is a very difficult thing to do, but that's also another kind of on the ground human behavioral challenge that you can give yourself. But I want to come back to Brian. I see you, Scrub Lord. I'm gonna answer your question, but I need to answer Brian's question first. What is the military and police involvement in racial hatred, and how could they help it? Yeah, I mean the police, and I'll focus on police involvement. Obviously, military overseas racial hatred is a problem, but police involvement, is a result of the system, and it's a whole bunch of things combined. And so so there are a couple things that we could do to change things. For one, the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that in police, military, even nurses and other medical professionals in emergency rooms, maybe even firefighters in some jurisdictions, if you say if you work in one of those professions and you say, hey, I've experienced something traumatic, I need some help, some mental help, you can lose hours, you can lose your job, you can lose standing, whatever it is. Well, that's a problem, right? We're all people, and if you experience traumatic things, you need help and support in dealing with that stuff. And so right, but it's if we're incentivizing them not to get the help that they need. And so we need to I think we need to have active legislation that says that if somebody in any of these professions says that they need help, they know their pay cannot be cut. They cannot have any kind of their pay cannot be cut. They can never have any kind of what's the word? Nothing against them for asking for help. They need to be given that help. But since that's not the reality right now, one of the things that happens is the only way to deal with that is compartmentalization. So kind of this separating off of the trauma that happened, separating it off from your normal regular life, which is a coping mechanism and a necessary one, right? It's how, right? It's you can't function in regular life if you're not separating this stuff away, if you don't have the tools to deal with it. And so this is a really powerful thing that we could do. But also, eliminating the flow of military weapons to police precincts, addressing, qualified immunity, active training against active racial bias training, when done correctly, has proven to be effective. So that's helpful as well. There are a variety of different things that need to happen. Some of it is going to be more municipal, some of it is going to be more national. One thing I really want to do is empower the Department of Justice, both financially and legislatively. It's already a thing that we have that's supposed to hold police precincts accountable. Can't really right now because it just doesn't have the resources. So we can do that. That's another thing that could really help. So these are ways to address kind of what's happening with the police, but it's also just, who's giving the orders as well, and that's where it comes back to the voting systems. Okay, so Scrub Lord, you've been saying a lot of stuff, a lot of very racially charged stuff. Let's address it. I am neither left nor right. I think that those terms are distorted and twisted, and they don't hold any real meaning anymore. The media has really taken them, and different groups have taken them in different directions, and they're not helpful in presenting clarity about the way that I feel or think about things. And I think that's true for everybody. A lot of people will tell me that they are left or right or Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal, and then they tell me what they think about specific issues, and then it's like, oh, that's not, and it's like, that's not what those words mean, but whatever. Same thing, communist, socialist, capitalist, whatever, all those same words, they're all effectively meaningless. They've all been twisted and distorted by the media, so I don't use any of them because they lack clarity in conversation. Let's take a look through what else you said. Do I want smaller or larger government? I want, again, that dichotomy is an oversimplification of the complexity of these issues. There are some things that work best when dealt with at a national level. There are some things that don't work at all when happening at a national level. They have meaning, but it's not the same to everybody. It doesn't like, that's my point, is like those words mean very different things to different people. So using them is unproductive and doesn't actually help me convey what I feel and think to people if I use them. That's why I don't use them. Again, on this smaller or larger government thing, I say nothing. I mean, is there a specific issue you want to ask me about, or do you just want to focus on identity politics that most people tend to find annoying? A lot of people are sick of the identity politics, and I am too. So if you have specific things that you want to talk about, we can. But I'm talking about the smaller or larger government thing. So things like the military, yeah, I think that should be a national level thing. Healthcare, I think, is most efficient at the national level. Universal basic income is most efficient at the national level. But there are other things that are much more efficient at the local level. Things like a lot of infrastructure is better handled at the local level. You can have, kind of like how your jurisdiction is run. Like I was talking about voting systems. So like, it's like right now in Austin, we have a city manager, but like that made sense when the city was smaller. But it doesn't make sense anymore for the city. It's causing a lot of problems, so we're trying to get rid of the city manager. Like, you wouldn't want to have a federal mandate on that. You would definitely want to leave that up to jurisdictions, to smaller jurisdictions. So it's about picking the right things for the federal government to be involved in and not be involved in. So I think that this dichotomy of smaller or larger government is the feds have no constitutional power to offer healthcare. They already do. I don't know what else you want. I'm talking about like what's efficient. We want to take care. If you want to take care of people, if you want a healthy, productive society, let's do it in like universal health care is a really efficient way to do it. Now I agree. It's not in the Constitution, therefore it belongs to the states or the people, according to the 10th Amendment. Have you ever read the Constitution? I have read the Constitution, and I understand this states' rights issue. My concern, coming up here on the 24th, it will have been over half a century since a proposed amendment to the Constitution has been ratified. The Constitution, in my opinion, is no longer a living document. It is falling behind. And I think in the way that the perspective that I have is, my concern is the well-being of people. And that's the most important thing to me. The most important thing is the well-being of people. And in order to And one way that we can improve the well-being of people is through universal health care. Now, I want to be very clear. Universal health care is a non-trivial problem. That's a really, really hard thing to do. The logistics are really, really difficult. The Constitution is the highest law in the land, but our law does not define my morality. Just because the Constitution is the highest law in the land doesn't mean it's the best. I'm definitely not a commie, but you can call me whatever you like. I think it's reasonable to say that a document that's only been updated one time in the last 50 years is maybe fallen a little bit behind. I think that that's a reasonable thing to say, and so what I'm saying is let's focus on what matters. Let's focus on the well-being of people. I don't think a national healthcare system would be a good idea, but I do think there should be some sort of public healthcare system in the U.S. and let the private system compete with it. So my preference for national healthcare would be to have universal quality healthcare and also allow the private system to exist as well. That would be my preference. Healthcare is incredibly complex. We're not going to get it right on the first try. It's going to take time and tweaking. And I believe that the goal should be for the government to outcompete the private sector. That's what I think the goal should be. I think that makes the most sense. It's the people don't trust the government right now for good reason, and the government needs to earn their trust back. And so I don't believe in eliminating private insurance and private healthcare. I actually see a benefit to keeping it around that I don't think a lot of people who really, really want to get rid of it don't see and haven't heard before, which is over time, let's say the government does figure its shit out, and let's say the government does figure out how to logistically do universal healthcare really, really well eventually. The private healthcare industry will shrink and shrink and shrink, but then I don't think it will disappear. I think it will stick around, and it will draw medical professionals who are in it for the money and not in it for taking care of people, which is not most medical professionals, but they do exist, and it will draw them away. And then you'll have all these rich people who use the private healthcare system, and you'll have all these rich doctors and all these rich people all throwing money at each other, and they'll kind of be off in their little world, and that's fine. I'm not worried about them. They'll be okay. Let them go do their thing, and the rest of us will take care of each other. The rest of us will all operate on some form of a public system, some form of a universal system with people who are with medical professionals who are in it to take care of people, and people who just need to be taken care of, and we'll work together on that. I don't know that the problem with America is how big and how different it is. What I say is diversity without division. We can celebrate the former and work to increase the former while working to reduce the latter. So the goal here is appreciate and celebrate the diversity without creating all the division. It's non-trivial, but this is what I've been talking about on my stream is kind of how we can deal with this. Ranges, no hate crime because right wing can't stand left wing prospering even after the struggle they went through. I think that's an oversimplification. We talked about that a lot more earlier on in the stream. No way Jose says the government should be to outcompete it, but without laws that hinder them. I think the government should spend money on building hospitals from the ground up with doctors on the public payroll. I recommend you look at the Spanish healthcare system. They have a mixed system. I'm certainly not rich, but I do use the private one, but whenever I've needed the public system, it has been there for me. That would be great. That's a perfectly acceptable model. I would likely vote for that. There's a certain degree of, it feels like every single representative has their own system that they're proposing. So I'm not gonna waste my time coming up with the 300th different system. I will likely just jump on board with whatever seems to be at the forefront. Again, the United States is famously bad at logistics for a lot of things, and like I said, we're not going to get it right away, and so I'm not going to be super stingy about what I do and don't vote for, because it's just like I know that it's not going to be perfect right away. I do think that for the United States, the general concept of taking Medicare, which is a system that does already work pretty well, and expanding it to cover everything and everyone, is like a sensible approach at a high level. Making it happen is tough. But I do think that generally that makes sense, and I would likely vote for Medicare for all should it come to the floor for a vote. It's not perfect. There are things I would want to change about it. I would want to keep the private system around, but it certainly seems significantly better than what we're currently at. But yes, what you're talking about with the Spanish system, that seems like a system I could get behind if that came to the floor for a vote. Okay. Does anybody else have other specific things that they wanted to talk about? I guess I could swing back around and talk a little bit again about the hate crime. So yeah, well, I kind of don't want to repeat everything I just said because that was kind of like a whole 5-10 minute thing. But we dehumanize everyone in this country, black, white, brown, everybody, but then we give power and permission to commit violent acts to one group of people, and then we tell that group of people over and over again that they're going to lose something, whether it's their identity, their job, their country, whatever. It doesn't matter whether or not that's true. It's irrelevant. Truth is irrelevant in this context. But that's what we tell them. And we tell them that they're going to lose it because of this other group over there. I don't want to say group of people because remember, everyone's dehumanized. And so so human nature does not like loss. They're afraid they're going to lose something. They're told that it's going to be taken from them by this thing over there. They're told that they're not human. They're told this other group isn't human. And so the morality of people killing people doesn't exist anymore. It disappears. There's no moral obligation to the world because there are no people involved in this whole thing. And so boom, there you go. That's how you get hate crimes and these violent acts. Is you have people who there's no morality stopping them because everyone in the situation's been dehumanized, and you have all this rhetoric. And I went on earlier to talk about the deeper root causes of why all those things happen, why we dehumanize, why people are subject to these narratives, why the power of permission is given, and all this stuff. Minorities can commit hate crimes. But there's certainly in the United States right now, the majority of hate crimes are coming from are perpetrated by white men. It doesn't mean that other groups of people can't commit hate crimes, but much more power and permission has been given to this one group of people than others. And if the power and permission was given to a minority instead of a majority, you'd probably see those hate crimes coming from a minority, right? But again, the point is I'm just talking about the reality of the world we live in, or the country we live in, I should say, is more specific because in other countries you see other results. I think now and in the past, the majority of all hate crimes do not come from minorities. Yeah, that's reality. Yes, that's reality. What we're talking about is the possibility, and what I'm saying is that the root causes are the dehumanization of everybody, as well as giving the power and permission to just one single group of people, and then telling that group of people over and over again that they're going to lose something because of this other group, and that combination of things is going to lead to hate crimes, and basically in every instance that the power and permission has been given to the majority, not the minority, and that's why we see the majority do it. I don't think it comes from permission and empowerment because society is pretty clear against white supremacy and violence against minorities, be it racial or sexual. It doesn't matter. So when I say power and permission, right? So let's address this. It's a little bit more implicit rather than explicit. The permission is implicit based on these centralized narratives from profit-driven media that spread this misinformation and this false propaganda, to get people angry and watch more, but it bleeds into it. The permission comes from a combination of like the dehumanization and also like just the empowerment in itself. There's definitely the majority is given more power than the minority, right? Like that's kind of go hand in hand. So even though like culturally we say the culture is pretty clear against white supremacy and violence against minorities, be it racial or sexual, I think that also depends on what echo chamber you're in, because that's another thing that's been amplified in recent years in the information age, is our echo chambers. We've seen the rhetoric we've seen a centralization of narrative, and we've seen the rhetoric become more and more polarizing and divisive and centralized. And so it's easier for people to fall in, and so people fall in these echo chambers. And another contributing factor is economic disparity, right? If people are hungry or they're poor, they're not secure in their basic needs, their brains just become more subject to this kind of stuff because they're now in a scarcity mentality. I don't see how it is implicit either, though. If you listen to the Ben Shapiro's of the world, they are going to tell you white supremacist is awful and his narrative is not radicalized. I see it more just being anti-identity politics. I agree with the economic disparity part. But, like, it exists, though, right? Like, okay, so, like, you gave Ben Shapiro as an example. But, like, it doesn't... You're saying if you listen to the Ben Shapiro's of the world. But not everybody listens to the Ben Shapiro's of the world. Right, there are people who listen to different groups of people, who listen to maybe like, I don't know, what was his name, Steve Bannon or something, and it's like, again, it's the echo chambers, and so it's like you don't need to get to everybody, you need to get to just enough people. If you get to getting to a small group of people. Who then have and dehumanizing everybody and giving them the power, aka, guns and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying no more guns. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying no more guns, but guns give you guns are a type of power. It's like, okay, this is naturally going to lead to hate crimes. So let me check my calendar real quick because I think I have something else coming up. How long have I been at this? Oh, only about 42 minutes. Boy, I've been talking. Co-op firm steering me with Sue. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get off unless you guys had something else you wanted to talk about. So if you do, throw it in the chat. What do you think about affirmative action kind of policies? Yeah, so I always have to Google what affirmative action means, because I just want to make sure I get this right. I mean, I assume this is just like active policy rather than neutral policy. Okay, affirmative action refers to a set of policies and practices within a government organization seeking to increase the representation of particular groups based on their gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in areas in which they are underrepresented, such as education and employment. So generally, yes, I am in favor of affirmative action. Asian business owners were telling other Asian businesses to get guns. Yeah, that's one of the results, right? And it's like I want to address these more core deep root problems. But yeah, affirmative action kind of policies, I am generally in favor of. Like I said, diversity without division. Diversity is a strength. Division is a weakness. And so generally I am in favor of them. I understand, and the question is just like how it's a scale, right? It's not a black and white thing. It's like how strong is your affirmative action policy? And so they could be weak, they could be strong. So it's about finding, it's everything in moderation. It's about finding that right mix. But I do think it's helpful. Like the quote unquote tyranny of the majority is a real thing. Do I think affirmative action policies is one of the things that help increase the feeling of abandonment on poor white communities, making it easier for them to fall for more far right sort of narratives. I don't want to necessarily call it far right, but I think it is. I think it does contribute. Which is again why I say like everything in moderation here. it is absolutely leveraged in those narratives. And part of the problem is, again, like, they are subject to these narratives when when they're in economic disparity, right? Like, it's a combination of things. It's no one single thing. But I do think it contributes to that, and that's like a problem and a thing that we need to look out for and think about. I'm a huge fan of a universal basic income. You pull people out of poverty, you remove their scarcity mentality. People's brains start functioning and working again. Generally, I think that will help. I think the better way to help minority communities is to do things based on income and not race per se. Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I mean, particularly because it's all about class, right? It's always class is the number one thing, and that's why universal unconditional basic income is like the primary thing, and so helping minority communities, yeah, that's why I believe universal basic income is the first step. So that's doing things based on income, unconditional basic income. Boom, there you go. First step. We will try to help poor communities. Automatically, a lot of minorities communities, especially blacks, are going to be benefited. Yes, but the 50% of whites or so that are poor are not going to feel attacked by those policies. Exactly, and that's why I'm hugely in favor of UBI. Number one biggest question for UBI: how do you pay for it? Who pays for it? And will it be a value? So yeah, we can talk about UBI. That's why I don't like the left in America in general, because they make everything so racial. Yeah, the identity politics gets very extreme. Well, Brian, let me address your question. So UBI, my version of the Freedom Dividend program. You know what? Let me pull up my. Actually, I already have it pulled up. What am I doing here? I will put it on screen for you, just to make it a little bit easier. I always like to keep it pulled up here. We'll bring it over here. Let me switch to my screen. Value-added tax. Yeah, so here's mine here, and let's zoom in even a little bit. Okay, so then how do we pay for it? It starts with a value-added tax. Over 150 nations have implemented a VAT, and it works. A VAT is a transactional tax on every purchase, much like the sales tax found in most U.S. states. But here's something you might not have realized. Most business-to-business transactions are not subject to sales tax. So the central warehouse that buys cases of burger patties from the meat processing plant doesn't pay a sales tax. The corporate chain restaurant that buys those patties from the warehouse doesn't pay a sales tax. But when you get the bill at the end of your meal, when you're done eating your burger, what do you see tacked on the bottom? A sales tax. Why do everyday consumers like you and me have to pay all these extra taxes when trillion-dollar tech companies like Amazon pay $0.00? And that's where the money is. The combined market cap of the two largest American corporations is far more than the combined net worth of the 400 richest American individuals. I have nothing against wealth taxes, but in practice, wealth taxes do not work. VATs do. How much is this VAT? A VAT of around 20%. I know that feels high, but remember, you're bringing in an extra $2,000 per month in my version of the Freedom Dividend. And we can graduate the VAT, exempt staple goods like groceries and diapers completely. This is something I actually haven't stated in here yet. I also, secondhand clothing and other secondhand items, I have half a mind to exempt the VAT from secondhand selling of everything under $30,000. And we can graduate this VAT. We'll exempt staple. Let's hear. We can crank it up on luxury goods. If you buy something that costs over $100,000 or $1 million, VAT percentage will increase to 40%, even 60%. So this is something I was looking at earlier. The recent T-Mobile and Sprint merger was like $27 billion or something, or $28 billion. T-Mobile is they call it a merger because the companies were of similar size, but T-Mobile was the surviving brand. So it was an acquisition. It was a $27 billion acquisition. If there was a 40% VAT on that acquisition, maybe they'd think twice about doing that acquisition. I don't want a continued monopolization of corporations, and right, monopolies are hurtful. This is a huge thing. It's huge antitrust. And so the magic of a VAT is that large corporations can't wriggle their way out of paying them. That's why over 150 countries use them. So when Facebook and Google sell ad space on your phone screen, or when Amazon tricks you into buying more crap you don't need, or when the semi-trucks start driving themselves, all those transactions will be unavoidably taxed, and you will get that money back in the form of your freedom dividend. This VAT will generate over $1.5 trillion in new revenue every year that goes directly to regular Americans like you. Let me pause and check out the comments. Value-added tax is useful, but awful. Exactly 100%. Taxes are going to be passed on to the consumer, though. You're going to pay that like 20% on the final price, even if you're not going to see it. Giant corporations getting around the tax by dumping inventory prior to the end of the year. So you pay on the transaction itself. So you don't. Well, I mean, there are a variety of ways to implement a VAT, right? So like I know the UK's it's a whole thing right now with like paying it quarterly or whatever. But like you can apply it at the level of the transaction. Yeah, it's a transaction, whether it's cash or stocks or whatever. They're all transactions. But so the tax is going to be passed on to the consumer, though. So what I'm saying is, remember, you're bringing an extra $2,000 per month. That's going to outweigh the increase in prices from the VAT, unless you're already spending like more than $10,000 a month. If you are already a high spender, yeah, you're not going to have a net benefit in that direct way. There are indirect ways in which you will benefit, but directly you will not have a benefit. But if you're a regular ass person who doesn't spend more than about $10,000 per month, you'll be fine. Okay, so you get that money. What are you going to do with it? You'll probably spend it. Sure, some of it will go back to Amazon, but most of it will stay in your communities. More of your neighbors will start small businesses. You'll be able to afford the membership fee for that sport your kid wants to try. Maybe you'll leverage it to spend more time pursuing your artistic interests. Or maybe you'll just want to spend more time at home with your family. Whatever you personally decide to do with your freedom dividend, though, the studies are clear. Universal basic incomes increase economic activity, which just cycles more money into the freedom dividend program. We're talking another $1.5 trillion in revenue from increased economic activity every year from cycling from your hands into your community and then ultimately right back to you. So basically, the VAT plus UBI is the government facilitating the cyclical flow of money through the economy, right? The number one way to a healthy economy is for consumers to spend money. That's how you get a healthy economy. It's economics 101. So there's more. We need more money than that. That's not quite enough, but I want to pause and look at the comments again. Giant corporations are going to get, I do think, okay, nothing new. Is that enough? Almost. We'll save well over $500 billion from the streamlining of welfare programs as discussed earlier. So the UBI is an opt-in program. If you are getting unearned income from federal assistance or welfare programs, you can either keep those or you can drop them and opt into the freedom dividend. It's your choice. The key crux of all of those programs is that they are conditional. Those conditions are incentives. Let me scroll up actually. Let me just read this. With our current social welfare programs is that they are conditional. For those Americans who are dependent on these programs, the threat of losing that support is more rightly considered the threat of death. In this country, we all need money to survive, unfortunately. Rent always comes due, and thousands of homeless Americans die on the streets every year. Any life changes that could lead to losing support is not an option. This could include positive changes like becoming able, becoming healthy, getting a job that pays a wage, switching to a job that pays a higher wage, or even getting a raise. These are things we want all Americans to do, whether they are ourselves or someone else, but many don't because the conditions of their livelihood incentivize them to stay stuck in place. Conditions are synonymous with incentives, and when the alternative is death, those incentives are rather strong. Those incentives cause people to behave strangely. A simplification and streamlining of welfare structures into a single unconditional basic income erases those incentives and frees Americans to improve their lives without fearing for their lives. We're not getting rid of these systems. It's an opt-in program. In order to receive it, you must give up your other federal government support. Social Security retirement benefits are untouched, as well as Social Security disability. Veterans disability is untouched. Unemployment insurance is untouched because at state level, although love unemployment insurance. What else? Rental assistance is untouched, and there's something else. Medicaid is also state level, that's untouched. Blah blah blah. So yeah, you can stay or stick or stay. It's up to you. Okay, let's keep going. So that's a $500 billion. Another 200 billion plus, and this could argued is way greater, much more than this, will be saved from decreases in spending on healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services, and much more as a result of having a healthier, wealthier populace. Additional funding would be secured through eliminating the Social Security taxable earnings cap, implementing a securities transaction tax, which is like stock market speculation will be reduced, which is a good thing. Eliminating subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, ending the favorable tax treatment of carried gains and capital interest, fully funding the IRS. This is a really weird one. We've been reducing the funding and empowerment of the IRS, which makes no sense. It's like, why would you cripple your revenue operations? The IRS could go after a lot of corporations and rich people about a lot of stuff, but they don't have the ability to do it because they just don't have the funding. For every dollar you put in the IRS, you get 7 back. Most of what the IRS does is go after corporations. And eliminating waste in the Department of Defense. And that's just through cutting the budget. It's that simple. That doesn't need to be complicated. The overfunding of the Department of Defense leads to a lot of waste. And so you cut the budget, the first thing that's going to go is all the waste. And also the other benefit of cutting the budget is when teams are overfunded, they tend not to come up with creative solutions to problems. And so having that kind of moderate to low budget forces them to come up with creative solutions to problems. So cutting the budget of the Department of Defense will actually lead to a stronger Department of Defense. Okay, so let's take a look at the comments. How do they get that estimate? Is the amount gradually going to diminish the higher the income of the person is per month, or is it blanket 2K for everybody? Blanket 2K for everybody. It is not going to be means tested. The moment you means tested, the moment you put conditions on it, it just becomes another broken, dehumanizing, bullshit welfare program. I don't want any more of those. We have enough broken bullshit, means tested, conditional, dehumanizing bullshit welfare programs. We already have enough of those. We don't need any more. So this is unconditional. It's the same for everybody. It removes stigma, and you're gonna get way more back from rich people anyway. It's like how many, right? We top 1%. 1% of this program is nothing. When China is increasing theirs, the U.S. is already on an arms race, and they don't know about it. So yes, here's the thing. This is another thing I want to do while cutting the budget. The other thing that I want to do is I want the formation of a 7th branch of the military, the cyber force. The U.S. is falling way behind. Is falling way behind with tech, and you're absolutely right. China is way ahead, and we need to catch up. And the cyber force can address issues both domestic and foreign. It can work on election security. It can work on securing our own data. It can do foreign stuff as well. But the U.S. it's also will provide a way for the U.S. to put funding into R&D for technology. Obviously we know that it's hard to get Congress. It's easy to get Congress to give money to the military. It's hard to get them to give money to technology since they got rid of the Department of Technology in 1995. So having a cyber force could be a good way to kind of roundabout way to funnel money into technology. Eliminating waste is necessary, but it needs to be done the hard way. Those military contractors, man, they're all in bed with our representatives. I wouldn't be against. I would like to hear more on your perspective of eliminating about doing it the hard way. Eliminating waste is necessary, but it needs to be done the hard way. I think, right, it's not going to be the end all be all. Let me put it this way. The hard way, we'll call it the hard way, that needs to be a separate piece of legislation. For this, it needs to remain simple. UBI, the Freedom Dividend Program, needs to remain simple. This is a way to help keep that simple. Eliminating waste in Department of Defense. I could just say cutting the budget of the Department of Defense, but eliminating waste is if we want to do the hard way, whatever. I'll do what works. Like this is I'm not gonna die on a hill. This is not a hill I'm gonna die on about what semantics we do. If we're putting this policy together in Congress and it's if it's somehow more attractive by eliminating waste rather than just straight up cutting the budget or whatever, which of course cutting the budget is like, non-trivial because everything's assigned in different ways. Then sure, I'll do that. Like I'm not gonna squabble over which terminology we use. We just gotta fund this damn thing. And so this is a way to do that, and it's variable. Like how big is the securities transaction tax? How I would want to completely eliminate subsidies for fossil fuel industry. I would want to completely end the favorable tax treatment. Fully funding the IRS. That's a bit of a soft term, right? So it's like some of this is a little bit variable, and like this is designed to be like this like set of things is designed to be like workable, of like we can kind of move things around and adjust things as necessary depending on like what the exact numbers come out to be. But I'm gonna end it there. I got a meeting coming up I gotta get ready for. I got a bunch of meetings today actually. But hey, you guys have seen Brian Rochesky photography. I never said hate is a crime. I'm talking about a specific type of crime in that is categorized as a hate crime. But I'm gonna end it here. Brian Rochetsky, as you see in the chat, he and I are gonna be doing a live stream tomorrow. He's gonna be interviewing me, or really it's more just a discussion. You'll be seeing me post about that on all my social media, my Twitter and everything. You can go to voteforsass.com to go to the Connect tab to find where all my social media is. So voteforsass.com, connect, and then you'll find links to. Oh, what happened? That was weird. Oh, it clicked twice. So you can connect. You can find more details on that. Find the YouTube link for it and everything. And I'll see. Come check us out tomorrow. Love to see you there. All right, I'm ending the stream. Bye bye. Talked a lot. Talked for like an hour straight. My voice.